Welcome back to Raw, the podcast. I'm your host, Allie, founder of The Cheeky Clean, a wellness brand empowering consumers to live more consciously. I'm solo in the stew today, and that feels really freeing. I'm chilling in a casual fit. I wanted to just bring some raw realness to you all today. We're going to start with a card pull. Jen, the owner of Proper Roots Studio, where I record, she has a lot of cool resources in here, everything from inspiring books to these really cool cards, tarot, oracle cards, astrology. These things are really just tools for perspective shifting, as is inspirational books, ancient texts. They aren't ever to be future predictors. It's more to help you gain insight into your personality or into just the way you're seeing this movie that we're living in currently. So sometimes I like to pull a card and just set the intention and set the mood for the podcast. I usually do this off air, but I figured, you know what? Let's bring y'all into it today. So take a breath. Take one with me. It feels so good to remind our bodies to breathe. That is the number one most free wellness tip you can give yourself. Just remember to breathe. So we're breathing, we're asking the cards to give us what we need to hear today. Oh, how I love this, especially when you guys hear what today's episode is about. But it says, no matter how far you travel, line home is always available. No matter how far you've traveled from who you thought you were, who you want to be, there's always a way back to your heart space, to your soul space. There's always a line home. There will be smog, static, interference, and interruption. This doesn't matter. The line remains in service. Shut your eyes, send yourself love letters, postcards, smoke signals, telegrams. Place one hand over your heart and breathe. Can you hear you now? Wow. Thank you, universe. That is what we needed. It is a perfect way to set the intention and perspective for our episode today. I am so deeply rooted in my passion for helping people live lighter, healthier, longer, and really more aligned and happy. From the beginning of starting my blog space, it's always been about sharing my real raw experience in hopes that I can invite in conversation, connection, and opportunity for us to heal as a collective through these mutual shared experiences. And it's been an interesting ride as I've left corporate 6 months ago now officially to really focus on just creating, first and foremost, myself as an individual who is empowered and conscious and embodying everything that I'm talking about on a day-to-day basis, especially after living what had become very unaligned personally. And becoming a vessel to have a podcast, have guests on, and share my own story is something that I'm so proud and honored to do. Last week, Jen and I were chilling in the studio. We were kind of like testing out some new sound and audio and tech, and we just filmed our conversation. And she said something that really got me thinking. She said, I think it's really important that you continue to share how hard your journey is sometimes to show people the reality and the vulnerability of what living is. And we kind of got into this conversation about the wellness industry in general and how it has become, and really why I started again a vulnerable page in the first place was because I found the influencers on social media to be so unrelatable for these wellness hacks and lifestyles and toxic positivity to be so different than the reality that I was living. And I think I started as a lifeline almost of, sending up a flare to the sky and say like, hey, is anyone else like just trying to survive? And here's some of the things that I'm doing to survive. What are you doing to survive? And through that raw connection, we've been able to build together, grow together, evolve, and then as a collective cheeky community, start to thrive, start to make what started as one conscious decision of incorporating something positive, healthier healing into our lives that then compounded into a daily routine and a lifestyle that is something consistent that we can keep. The default becomes intentional decision making thinking instead of just being jerked around by these external things. The more I thought about that conversation that we had, and the more I've tapped into the way that I've been feeling lately, I felt this overwhelming need this week to really just kick it with you guys and have a raw ass conversation about where I am at in the healing journey and some of the things that I'm going through to really overcome some darkness and live differently. I'm honestly coming home to myself. Just so funny why I pulled that. And I've kind of had a breakthrough as of recently, really giving myself grace, really shifting a lot of things. I talked about the 4 pillars of growth in one of the recent episodes, and definitely go back and listen to that one, maybe first before this one, to kind of give you a framework on where I've been focusing. And it's that focus, those practices that have allowed me to start to really feel inside myself and start to make some major conscious changes and decisions in my life so that I'm not continuing to live in fight or flight. When I started to do this inner work, I started to realize how much I was in fight mode and may have been for a long time of my life. But even why this blog was started in the first place, I wanted to fight back against the systems that harmed my parents, the lifestyles that harmed my parents, any unconscious choice that wasn't going to help me heal. And physically, it was more attainable to say, okay, diet, working out, avoiding chemicals and ingredients that are bad for me, like I got it. Those were pretty easy shifts for me to make. But when it came down to really starting to do the work to shift the way I see myself, the way I feel about myself, and ultimately becoming safe in my own body, until I started to do that work, I was realizing that a lot of the external norms that I was putting all of this weight on were really misaligned. And when I started to do that work, things started to shift. Things like my job, things like my relationships. And sometimes you have to really get comfortable in your own skin to become brave enough to overcome that fear and start to let go of those things that aren't serving you. But with that has come a forced loss of control. And you take someone like myself who's type A and has been an achiever her whole life and throw me into now all of these letting go, shedding all of these things that have kept me, my personality and identity wrapped up in it. And it's shell shocking. And my first initial reaction over the last 6 months of this newfound life has been to revert back to fight mode. Some people go into flight, some people go into freeze. I go into fight. And what more can I do? What more can I create? What does other people want to see? How do I make money? Do became this once again cycle that I was in. And it kind of took this particular healing season. Spring tends to bring up a lot for me emotionally. It's a space and a time where my parents' anniversaries of their passing, both of their birthdays, Mother and Father's Day, it's a time that typically triggers me. And for the first time, I'm dead sober. I'm not in a relationship. I don't have someone to project on. It's just me. I don't have a big ass job to travel for and numb with. And I think I've really learned as of recently that even that grief is something that I've identified with and held on to as a crutch. And in releasing these negative emotions, these feelings, thoughts, stories, it allows us to transcend. But in order to transcend, we sometimes first have to descend. And I think so few people in the public forum talk about the descendants, the real work that it takes to change your patterns and overcome toxic ways of living in order to start the transcendence and really find inner peace, stillness, and ultimate health. We see the after fact. We see, now I look and feel so good. We don't always see what the fuck it took to get there. And that's what I hope to share a little bit more about today, because the truth is, for me, the wellness industry can be fatiguing. And as a wellness entrepreneur, if I'm fatigued by it, I can't imagine how someone so deep in a dark place can look externally and feel seen. And so I want to share a little bit more vulnerably about my particular journey and how I am sitting with and overcoming the dark to get to a brand new, even brighter light that I'm so grateful for. 6 months ago, I left behind structure. I left behind a paycheck. I left behind a corporate path and the security that came with that because my spirit was craving something deeper. It was the first time I started to tap back into my intuition and start to listen. It hasn't been an easy shift, but it's been necessary. Coincidentally, on the exact same day that I put my resignation in, a major breakthrough happened in a relationship that I was in, that I was trying to release. And as I was going through the process that week of having these deep emotional conversations with managers and colleagues and telling them about this massive change that I was making, I was doing so out of an Airbnb in Cleveland because my particular house wasn't safe for me to be at emotionally or physically because the person who would not accept that I needed to be free wouldn't release me. Very few people I have opened up to and talked to about the emotional turmoil that I found myself in within that relationship. But those who I did open up to often said to me, Allie, why can't you see? Why don't you get a restraining order? Like, this is insanity. But I was at the tip of starting to listen to my intuition again. And something inside of me said, if you can just hold on and start tapping in deeper, you can fully change. And if you change, this can be released without legal issues, without ever seeing this person again. I knew somewhere in me that I was attracting these relationships, this job that no longer served me. And in order to truly shift everything externally in my movie, I had to change internally. So as I started to shed what started a few years ago, my skin like a snake, I was dropping leaves off of my tree of abundance. This tree that society praised me for its beauty. Big home, material things, marriage, job, relationship with someone who's making big money. I was taught this was the symbol of my worth. And it wasn't until recently that I've started to really understand the true formula and the commitment it takes to reclaim your nervous system. And honestly, it's hard work. But I remember sitting in my Airbnb, watching a podcast with someone else, a strong celebrity actress, be so vulnerable about a 7-year relationship that she found herself in that was emotionally terrorizing. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm not alone. And so I share a little bit about this today, not to say this person did this to me. I share about it to say we can find ourselves in these unaligned relationships, in these unaligned careers, and we will stay stuck there if we don't consciously make decisions to start to let go, start to release, start to sit in the unknown, and really start to feel our intuition come through and make these changes so needed so that we can shift everything around us. And it is possible. In the Bible, a sabbatical is not just a break from work. It's a time of intentional rest, flexion, and renewal, drawing from the concept of the Sabbath. It's a period where individuals are encouraged to step away from their daily responsibility to seek God's guidance and receive spiritual nourishment. And so I started down the path, and I quickly let fight or flight take over again. I was back in survival mode, ready to perform, to show the world I was worthy of this break and I'm worthy of being an entrepreneur. And it took months for me to finally learn that that's not the purpose of this season I'm in currently. In fact, that energy will suffocate me even more than what I set out to release in the first place. I hope on today's episode to share a little bit more about the reality of the sometimes really hard shit that it takes to overcome darkness and get to a brighter light. That frankly, the perfection of the wellness industry won't show you tied up in a cute bow. And with that, please join me in the wild waters of the unknown and welcome to the show. Let's get into it. Okay, so I want to start by talking about probably the number one tool in my toolbox right now, which is prayer. And growing up in a pretty formalized religion of Catholicism, prayer was kind of taught as more of this thing to save yourself, to do out of fear so that you can go to heaven. What I've learned now is that prayer is a technology. It's a way of connecting to a higher vibration by speaking into reality what you are trying to change within yourself in this earthly plane. For me, the best way that I've found to pray is on walks. And every day I walk my dogs anyways. I find walking in nature to be so soothing, comforting, and nourishing inside and out for me. And so I've talked about this a little bit in prior podcasts, but I take no headphones with me, just walking in silence. And most oftentimes I'm talking out loud. And I'm kind of like letting what comes. And I'm asking for guidance. I'm asking to show me how to change. I'm asking to show me a sign, help me shift and gain the ability to change the way I react, the way I show up, and to build the vessel for light and my ultimate abundant self to come through. What I've learned is been a source of a lot of my grief for so long, is feeling like I'm so alone because I don't have, the ability to pick up my phone and call my mom and ask her for help and guidance. And what would you do in this situation, or advice? I have a couple really close, trusted friends that are on the same page as me. And those are the people that I really can open up to and vent and trust their guidance, but they are very few and far between. And I've allowed myself to say, because I don't have this big, huge network of family support system, I'm alone. And so prayer for me has reminded me that I'm not alone. And I talk out loud and I bring that frequency in. And this week I was on my prayer walk. He said, I know I need to change. I know that I need to transcend these feelings of loneliness and grief and help me, show me how to release them from my identity. I no longer want to carry it. It served me. I'm ready to heal from it. Show me how to change, because right now I feel so suffocated. I feel suffocated in the way that I'm being asked to show up. I feel suffocated in what I think I'm supposed to produce. I'm being suffocated by the algorithm and by people's opinions and advice of you should do this, this, and this, and how are you going to make your money, and do consumers even care about what you're sharing? And all of this outside noise is suffocating me. And I'm just feeling this intense need. Show me how to breathe, how to come back home. And I'm on my walk, and I usually do like 3 to 4 miles at a time with my dogs, and I'm asking for a sign. So I get back to my house and I'm walking up my stairs, and I notice that there's this little chipmunk just chilling, like right on the edge of my garden bed. I'm like, hey, cutie, why aren't you running away in fear from my dogs? Like, usually, they're gone the second they see my dog's coming, because, that gosh knows they're going to chase him. And he was just sitting there. And I'm like, what is going on? This is so strange. So I took my beasts inside and I came back out and I'm like, what's up, buddy? What's going on, cutie? I'm like, is he stuck in this wire? He was like kind of sitting inside some garden wire that was on the side. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is he stuck in here? And then I realized that there was multiple pieces of garden twine wrapped around his cute ass little neck like a noose. And he was like gasping for breath with his cute little breaths. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to save you. If you watch my Instagram stories, I shared a little bit about this yesterday, but I honestly wouldn't have been okay if he died in front of me, and that wasn't going to be an option. So I go inside, I get scissors, and it wasn't as easy as just like snipping the top of the noose. Like, I had to touch this cutie, unwrap each one of these entangled wires, take them from around his neck, and the cutie was shaking silly in fear. But he sat there and he let me free him. And as I'm freeing him, as I'm talking to him, I'm watching him slowly start to take bigger and deeper breaths. And I'm like, it's working, So it gets off and I'm like, oh my God, you're alive. You're safe. You're free. And he was still like so scared for a minute. I go inside, I get organic sunflower seeds, I get some hydrogen water. I brought it back and I'm slowly feeding him these seeds to make sure that he could eat and that his throat was okay and that he was going to survive. And he's so scared, slowly taking each seed, putting it in his mouth. And this overwhelming feeling came over me. This is my sign. Like, here I am saying, show me how to breathe, show me how to not feel so suffocated. And I just saved a cute ass chipmunk from being strangled to death. If that is not the most fucking slap in the face of a sign, I don't know what is. And I took that really as an opportunity to say, what are the odds that I saw the chipmunk? What are the odds that you let me save me? Call it coincidence or not, to me, it was a profound experience and an opportunity to say, okay, so what is actually suffocating me metaphorically that I feel like I can't release and that's really truly keeping me stagnant? I realize that it's been many things. I've been carrying so much grief. I've been carrying so much anxiety. Prior to releasing my job and this relationship, I was carrying secrets, feeling so unaligned, wanting to share with consumers things that I was seeing behind the scenes, wanting to tell other women how to heal themselves so they don't find themselves in emotionally abusive relationships. Seriously, feeling like my voice, even though I share so much on a day-to-day basis, was being cut off by this fear of not being able to for some reason. And I'm like, wow, I need to start letting go. I need to start letting go. I need to tap into my vulnerable side. I was sitting so high in my tree of material leaves that I had started to create a whole nother fucking tree of new things that society would deem worthy, when really all I need to do is feel worthy within myself and let go and start releasing these negative, heavy, heavy things that are keeping me weighted down. I've talked about it in podcasts before, but these emotions that are stagnant and get stuck in our chakras carry us down like stand weights. And letting go is even a form of grief in itself because we're so used to identifying with those stories. But what waits on the opposite side of that is freedom. It's priceless and it's the mark of a new beginning. And I'm like, all right, like it's time to shift. What am I doing in my life right now that is making me feel so stifled, so suffocated? And it starts with simple things, really simple things. For me, I was really noticing myself comparing a lot to other wellness brand owners, to feeling like I'm putting my heart and soul into trying to share things that I know consumers want to hear, but getting so caught up in the 1, 2, 3 people that will tell me there's not a market for that. No one cares. Household brand names are always going to be king. Looking at influencers' pages who are just so different than me and feeling like, am I ever going to reach an audience of 2 million people if I don't have filler and Botox in my face and I don't sell things from the largest brands that are also the most toxic? Like, fuck that. And there has to be a market for people who don't want that lifestyle, who realize that that lifestyle is an external validation for what we're missing on the inside. Even starting to do this podcast, recording myself, putting myself, like editing myself on video. I'm comparing myself to people who are doing podcasts with huge views and huge platforms who are more focused on what their physical appearance looks like than the way that they feel inside. And I was starting to see this gap widen between my happiness and material living again. And I'm like, the fact that I'm feeling insecure in this way is such a mark of a time to shift and a time to go back in and go home inside and regain my confidence in the way that I'm living, in the way that I can help 1, 2, 3 people. For me, it's always been about if I can share one resource that helps one person feel less alone or live a little bit lighter or find a way to feel better or for their families to feel better in a sea of toxic norms, it's worth it. And so going back to the basics is so important. And that starts with becoming your own best friend. And that's what I'm really focused on right now is, you know what? I was going to come on here today and I was going to talk about all of these ways, all of these resources that you can use to do the work. But I think what I wanted to share more importantly was what it takes to do the work. because sometimes it's not about avoiding these dark feelings and pretending like you're healed and everything's positive. It's more about noticing and recognizing when you are in this darker, heavier space and knowing and trusting that in that space is where we find the most medicine. There has not been one guest that has come on this podcast that hasn't created a brand out of an absolute need personally because their family, or their friend was in a dark place. The industry was in a dark place. There was some like catalyzing event, chronic illness, cancer, allergies, something that catapults you into a different level of consciousness. And it's not emulating what your favorite perfectly drawn up influencer's doing. It's actually knowing like, okay, I'm in it right now. I am in fucking pain right now, and I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to know, and I'm going to trust that this too shall pass. And when you trust that this too shall pass, and you go inside and you say, I'm not thinking about how great everything's going to be in the future, but I know that this feeling is impermanent. I know everything is impermanent. And if I can just release my grip just a little bit on what I think life should be, or what I think a relationship should be, or what I think my job should be, that's when we find peace. And every time we release a little bit and we let ourselves feel that, feel it, feel it, feel it, we go down, we descend, and that's when we can open up ourselves to the true wisdom, to the internal knowing of actually being able to be open to receive the answers, to receive our intuition. When we are so caught up in what's going on externally, we never have a chance to move from our heart. We're moving from what we think we should be doing. This transcendence is it's a bridge. It's moving from fear to safety. And when I'm saying letting go slow and slow, it's stepping back off that mountaintop, off that cliffside edge that we're on in our reactive chaos. We're slowly stepping back. The cliffside that we're on in our grief and our loneliness and our shame and our guilt and all those feelings, we're at the cliffside. It's feeling so intense. When you just let it be and trust, like, this will not last forever, and you just allow yourself, you start to take slow but sturdy steps back off that cliffside, and you're moving closer and closer and closer and closer to safety. And safety and comfort within our own selves is the true goal. I know for a fact that I was looking for safety within other people. And that's why none of my relationships were working out, because I was looking for someone to save me. I thought my last relationship would save me, and he was my soulmate, and he was the complete opposite, lying to my face, and I couldn't even admit it. And it's because I was dangling on that cliff's edge, waiting for someone to save me, instead of going inside and knowing truly I can save myself. This external job, relationship, even the way that we create, that's what I'm learning now in entrepreneurship. It's even creation. We have to understand what our intention is behind it. And when we start to really think of our energy like an instrument, and we can start to tune in and understand what is leading me towards this, why am I doing these things? We start to be able to not only transcend from fear to safety, but we transcend from ego to attunement, to listening, to hearing, to understand what our true nature is actually meant for in this lifetime. We are all here to create. We all have inherent gifts. There is space in the wellness industry, the business industry, every industry for all of our unique gifts. The problem is most of us are so tied up in what formula we need to be following and how to do X, Y, Z, this, that, and the other in order to get there, when really it's already within us. We're just blocking our ability to flourish. I've talked a bit about a book called Seed of the Soul. I can't recommend it more because there's a whole workbook in the back. And every day I've been reading in the evening before bed. It gives a synopsis of one of the chapters, and it gives you tangible workshops to bring it to life. So I was reading the other day, it was about tapping into your intuition again. I also started reading the Elle Macpherson book, which is really good. I love a biography, especially one that is raw and real and genuine. And I'm only a couple chapters in, and I found it to be really really cool, badass, and open. Again, learning from other people's experience to me is so insightful, especially when they're willing to share the real nitty-gritty of what it takes to grow and overcome in this human experience. And she talks a lot about getting back to her own intuition and actually being quiet enough to hear the voice, to hear where you should go and what you should do without the need for the external environment to tell you. And this workshop chapter of Seed of My Soul gives an opportunity to exercise that. The author says, take a little miniature notebook around with you and start to recognize little decisions that you're making and write down, what is my intention behind this? And is it healthy for me? When I tell you guys, everything started to shift for me by doing just this little skill in this last week. I mean, insane. Because when you really think about it, for me, it was everything from, I'm going to be real honest, going on dates, getting coffee with other business owners, having guests on my podcast, going to India, everything from small stuff and how I'm spending my time to big stuff and how I'm spending my money and my energy. I took a look at this week with this and applied this exercise. And what that did was help me see, why am I doing these things? Why do I feel like I need to go on a date when I genuinely don't want to? I genuinely want to utilize the time that I have in my evenings currently to read and to write and to work on these skills that I know are helping me hone in on my evolving heart, and that will help me get to a place where I'm attracting in people that are at that frequency with me. Why am I saying yes to feeling like I need to go be out? Why am I saying yes to getting coffee with people? Why am I saying yes to having guests on the podcast just to fill the time and space when I started it to share my real vulnerable experience too? And yes, we are going to have more guests on the podcast, but I was getting so ahead of myself of trying to plan all these things out instead of really moving from intention and saying, is this person that I'm going to spend my time with, whether it's my personal time or my professional time, is this experience, what is my intention behind it? Is it so I can feel validated? Is it so I can feel worthy? Is it healthy for me? Is it healthy for me to go out on a date past the time that I go to bed usually, so that the next day I can feel really exhausted and overwhelmed and not in alignment? At this particular week and moment in my life, no. And so I had to say no to quite a few things boldly and without a whole lot of explanation to it. Those are little examples. Bigger examples would be India. I talked about it with Sarah. Something was calling me to want to explore my spirituality deeper. And I looked externally at all of these people who've had these wild, cool experiences and seeing places where people live in such different ways and getting out of my comfort zone externally. And what I realized was I was running, and that was a form of running and avoiding where spirituality really takes place, which is in my heart. And I can be in India experiencing profound things, but I can still be so misaligned in my heart. And until I embrace this uncomfort that's living inside myself, there's not a spiritual place, there's not a person, there's not a job, there's not a relationship, there's not success with my brand, there's nothing that is going to fulfill me. And it was a huge realization for me this week. And you know what's also really fucking cool is when you do start to choose yourself, two things happen. One, when you say no to something that you're not truly in alignment with, even if it's not forever, it's maybe just not right now. I don't have the space right now. I'm not in the capacity right now to hold this. One, you really see who the real ones are. And I mean real ones. The amount of love that was returned back to me by people who will forever be in my life from here on out, by me being honest and vulnerable and saying, listen, this is not a fit right now. I need to make sure that I'm in a steady place before I can spend time with you or on this trip with you. Those people that get it, real ones for life, dude. It shows their level of consciousness. It shows the type of friend that they are. It shows you that these people are long-term energy givers. They're not just in your life to get something from you. And that is such a beautiful thing, dude. It is such a beautiful thing because the real ones are always going to be real ones and they're always going to want you to put yourself first. So shout out to the real ones who I said no to this week. You also have the ones who you see then are takers and who are needing your energy for something for them. And it's funny because when I look back at that relationship that I was talking about early in the episode, we were together when I first started to do workshops and really pick up energy around Cleveland with after my corporate job, packing orders and doing seminars and starting to engage with the community. And every time I chose myself or my business or my purpose or what my heart needed in the moment over that person, it was a huge fight. It was blame and it was guilt that I would ensue. And it wasn't until, again, now looking back that I could see all these moments and realize, wow, that's a sign of misalignment in a relationship. Because you should always be able to choose what's best for yourself, and those people will always support you. The second thing you'll get is space. The fucking weights, did you hear that breath? The fucking weights that have come off of me by not feeling like I have to fill my time making sure that I'm appeasing everyone, even if it's not in alignment with me, has been so freeing. I am just in a space right now where like my health needs to be first. Body, mind, and soul. And that means I need to do daily movement in whatever way that works for me. It's not always lifting weights at 6 a.m. In fact, today I didn't lift weights at 6 a.m. I texted my girls and I said, hey, y'all, like, I got a lot going on tomorrow, so I'm just doing yoga. Done. You know what I mean? Old me would have ruminated over that, would have not only felt like, oh, I'm missing out on being with my girls, I would have felt like I'm losing all my muscle because I'm not staying in my routine. This like OCD energy. Fuck that, dude. We're women. We're evolving on a cycle, which is a whole nother story. We're going to do a whole podcast on hormones because that's been a journey that I've been tapping into. But the space that it creates in your day to day to stop doing things that you feel like you have to versus what you need to do for yourself, so freeing. And so in the evenings this week, instead of going on dates, instead of going to certain events that I was planning on doing, pulled out of an event that I was going to do in a couple weeks, it's freed up more space for me. It's freed up opportunity for me to spend more time in my practice, to cultivate more of a spiritual flow for when I teach yoga on Sunday morning. It's allowed me to take up a writing course, which is genuinely where my heart's at. Maybe I reel it in and I work on laying the groundwork and allow myself to do the writing and start to feel the things. I mean, I really noticed over the last few months with a lot of the things that I was doing externally, markets, lots of things that I realized I am getting away from my heart's true creativity, from my focus. Writing for me is my form of therapy, and I hadn't been writing for months. I got back to it and it was like feverish, like I couldn't stop. It's like something comes through me and it is different than the podcast because it's like I know that I'm being filmed. When it comes to writing, it's so private and so personal. I've never actually done a writing course before. If you live in Cleveland, first off, just Google any city that you're in. You can Google writing courses. And I found, I'm like, you know what? I always wanted to go to school for this. Like I always wanted to cultivate this skill. Why am I waiting? That would be so fun and so freeing. And I Googled writing classes near me, and Literary Cleveland, a fantastic organization here, was offering one starting in 2 days. This was Monday when I searched it. I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, I'm going to do that. When I tell you, talk about getting uncomfortable. Last night in our writing course, we had 3 different prompts, and you go through like a form of work, and then you spend a timed amount of time, just like your pen has to keep moving, and you just let come out whatever should come out. It was so interesting in looking back at those themes, what is hidden inside of me that wanted to come to light. The 3 things were I remember, what I've lost. And the last one, when we shared both of those with other people, so that was even more vulnerable, is sharing your work, like raw work. And the last one was what I'll never write about. And one of the things I said I'll never write about is this relationship I'm talking about today. And I think as I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I thought, you know what? Giving people some context of the fact that at the exact same time I left this corporate job, I left an incredibly tumultuous relationship, may help people see that even though my stories are of me feeling strong at the gym or supplements I'm taking that are helping me heal, it's all because of one reason, and that's to become stronger mentally, physically, and soulfully. And if you have the context sometimes to the raw experiences that humans are going through, it actually is relatable. And I hope that someone out there who sees this podcast is like, damn, dude, I'm not alone. Like, Cheeks is walking it with me, and I am walking it with you, dude. I'm in it and I'm shifting because I know that there is a stillness that's available inside all of us. And it's not external. It's not wrapped up in achievement. It's not in anything that society makes us think we are to be worthy. It's not the ticking time clock that if I don't have children soon, I'm going to miss out on this happiness to come to me. No, happiness is in here, dude. And that's the part of it that we need to seriously trust and believe. And I hope that in sharing these things with you guys, it helps you realize there is space to heal. And sometimes it requires us making hard decisions about where we're putting our time so that we can free up space for creation, for movement, for breathing, for prayer walks, for those things that make us feel good. It doesn't always mean, oh, I have to pay for this $3,000 wellness program and they'll tell me how to feel good. No, sometimes it means getting off our phones and not scrolling, learning how to be less of a consumer and more of a contributor in our own lives to our own healing. What's so interesting about total health and why I always say it's body, mind, soul is because mentally, emotionally, soulfully, and physically, it's all connected. If you've ever spent time meditating, and the reason why I talk about meditating is because I think it's a practice that forces you to be still and to start to notice what's going on inside of yourself. But why I'm so passionate about meditation and including it in my routine in some way, shape, or form is because it helps me bridge the gap between where I'm feeling fearful and what safety is available. And to realize that it's not out there, it's in here. And when you first start meditating, it's physically painful first. And that's what really starts to help your subconscious understand the mind, body, and soul connection is because you're able to sit there and almost notice yourself go in this circle, in this loop of, fuck, my leg is fucking killing me. My leg is fucking killing me. My leg is fucking killing me. And then it goes into, I can't sit here forever. How am I going to sit here forever? This is fucking crazy. Like, what are we doing? You notice this back and forth. And the more your mind becomes cluttered, the more pain physically you're in. And it feeds off of each other until you come back to that awareness of the breath, until you let those things go, and then they subside and the pain starts to release and the mental chatter starts to dissipate. But it takes, once again, knowing this is impermanent. My leg is not going to be numb forever. Just let it go. Overwhelming thought process that I'm having are just thoughts. Even by noticing that it's just thoughts, you're letting them go. It sounds so simple, but in a world for myself where my mind's been overactive as long as I can remember and mostly with worst case scenarios, just knowing that my thoughts are not me is so healing. And it starts this process of, again, coming back home to ourselves. Who are we when we're not overthinking? So powerful. You know, I mentioned in the beginning of the show today that this season is typically more challenging for me. I think I've almost wrapped up my identity in a lot of my grief, my guilt, my shame around this relationship that I'm talking about are things that I really want to heal and let go of. I want to shed so I can welcome in self-love, joy, acceptance, freedom inside myself, noticing more of what I've gained versus what I've lost. And I talk about prayer and I talk about these ways of trying to tap into the inner knowing. I've kind of been pulled between these two worlds of wanting deeply to hear myself while also getting so caught up mentally in what choices should I be making. I I heard something profound on Know Thyself podcast. Great podcast, my new favorite. And Corey Mascara was on it. So wise, such a beautiful episode. And he said, it's not in the choosing, but it's in the receiving. And if you feel like I've felt this year, especially in entrepreneurship, that I'm needing to make such big decisions, and if I don't go this way, then this will happen. And what if I go this way and this will happen? When you're feeling caught up in that choosing, that's when you need to be still, because you're going to make a decision that's not out of intuition, it's out of noise. And only when we slow down can we receive. And you get this hunch and you get this feeling of, you know what? Yeah, like I shouldn't be going to India right now. Not at all. And you move with your true nature and you open doors and you open space and you open time for what's going to come by just making that intuition, soul led choice versus decisions based on outside noise. And that's a learned practice. It's something, like I said, I'm really trying to study and get back to, but as much as I study and listen to podcasts and read books, it's learning to embody it and finding the practices in order to embody it. And so Corey also said this skill, which I thought was really cool, can be attained by just doing this. So take note of when you feel the most safe, the most grounded, and the most connected. How does your entire system orient? How does your body feel? How do you move in relationships and interactions when you're feeling safe and calm and grounded? And then notice on the contrast when you feel tight, fearful, and stressed. How do you react in those situations? How do you choose relationships in those situations? How do you make business decisions in those situations? For the most of my life, I've made really irrational decisions based on the latter: fear, stress, tightness. But when you start to truly notice and understand that distinction between those physical feelings and the way that you're then reacting and showing up in the world, you start to realize that you can take a totally different direction, and you probably would take a totally different direction by just noticing. And so now when I start to feel tight and I start to feel fearful and stressed, I'm not making a decision. I'm reeling it in. I'm sleeping on it. I'm writing about it, taking a beat. A lot of people have asked me what's going on with the collagen, and I will be able to share more soon. But that's been a true test for me in this entrepreneur journey, is why am I pushing and rushing this? And I needed to take a beat. And I've been really methodical and laying groundwork and working on the foundation and the seeds that are planting in order for that next venture to bloom when it's ready. And it's hard to not get instant gratification, but the silence and the stillness takes such a weight off of me than having to morph and contort myself into trying to squeeze the decisions I've made into a life that doesn't fit it. The surrender that I'm talking about when I say quiet and stillness, it's surrendering to the fact that my job wasn't in alignment, surrendering to the fact that I spent this time with this person that wasn't in alignment, that I made decisions that did not serve me. Surrender is less about what we will or we won't gain or what we didn't gain. And it's more about anchoring to the inner peace that already trusts that our true nature already has what it needs. And when we can take this conditioning out of what we think our personality should be or our life should look like, or the fear away of, well, what if, we open to what's meant to unfold for us, and it will. And so if you enter a job or a relationship or a business venture from a fear-based place, you are literally just going to play out the dynamics of your personality structure. When you break free from that personality structure and these reactions and this, I should be this way, or society wants me to be this way, and you really start to do this type of conscious work and then come out on the other side, your job, your relationships, and your business ventures will most likely all look different, because they are not coming from the space of consciousness where you were before. They're coming from a new space of consciousness. I think that's why I'm so adamant right now about not dating. And I go back and forth because, like, everyone whose path I cross tells me, Well, you need to be dating. You need to be putting yourself out there. You need to meet people. If you don't meet people, how are you going to find your person? You find your person by doing the work to become the person that you want to meet. I've felt like I'm on this river of the unknown, as Dr. Joe calls it. And until I'm in a place where I'm sure that I can hear my intuition and I can make decisions about the people, the places, the jobs, the relationships I want in my life wholeheartedly, I'm not ready to just spend my time with just anyone because I want those relationships to look like a higher version of myself. And I know I'm on the way there because I'm aware of the lower version that I was choosing at one point. And that's a powerful thing to know that you can change. But when you're on the river, like I'm in right now, shit gets hard, dude. And sometimes it is really lonely. And especially on anniversaries of my parents passing, it's lonely. And especially on holidays, it's lonely. But what's more lonely is being in a relationship where you're not in alignment. And that's why so many people are in marriages that they're so unhappy in and stepping out or buying things or doing whatever to feel something is because they're gripping so tightly to something that they hope will fix them or be them or scared to let go of or won't change. And change is powerful. And I can only hope and know that I'm going to continue to change into a better version. And that's the version that I not only want my future partner to meet, but the type of future partner that I do want to meet. And that higher version is the business owner that I'm going to be. But I don't need to rush right now and prove that I'm already there. Acceptance is the most important part of this story that I'm telling today. I think it is important to understand and validate where we are in the journey. And I think it's courageous to know that you've lost and you've mourned and accepting that grief and loss and shame and mourning are indicators that we're shedding is such a beautiful thing. For me, it's a turning point that I've hit recently where I've stopped feeling so angry at myself for having chosen these situations or relationships or miscalculations or decisions, and instead being at peace with the fact that I have gotten to learn from those things. And they have all been a part of my evolution. And now, lately, when I've been feeling the grief come up, I say, thank you, grief. It's knowing that I get to release now. I get to have loved something so much that now I get the opportunity to let it go. And what's even more beautiful is what can bloom in the space when we actually do let go. It's interesting because one of the themes that came up a lot in my writing last night from the heart was my mom. And I really realized that I'm carrying so much grief around missing her. But if I let go of some of that grief, imagine what can bloom in its place. Imagine the energy that I'm freeing up. And it doesn't take away from what I'm missing. It just allows me to replace that space with lighter living. You know, when I look at wellness influencers and health and even ingredients and reading them, I want to start. First off, I want to remind you guys that I have a plethora of information on my Instagram at The Cheeky Clean, in the highlights, on the feed, at my website. I have a shop in my bio link where you can go and it's organized by daily products to detox, supplements that I recommend. I have a plethora of resources that have been put out into the world to show you and help you make better decisions when it comes to ingredients. You can always DM me and ask me for product recommendations. I will continue to share products that I love, but you've probably noticed over the last recent time that I've been sharing a lot more about my spiritual journey and my overcoming emotionally the toxic emotions that I've carried. And that's just the place of life that I'm in. And when I let these things go, I'm freeing my body to being able to have this healthy, clean food move through me in such a more healing and nourishing way. As I said on the first podcast episode that I did, we can be so OCD about every ingredient that we're putting in our body. But if we are living with guilt and shame and fear, we will still get sick. So even though the algorithm might want me to share something that's prettier or something that's more perfect, or a brand wants me to work with them because they're the next big thing and I'll get a bunch of followers, that's not of interest to me right now. What's of interest to me right now is healing And I can only hope that I can empower the collective to heal from the inside out too. Inspiring others along the way to know that everything we need isn't outside in a pretty package. It's already within us if we just tap in is truly my goal. This is the season for me of laying down a new foundation. I took the first 6 months post corporate and post big life shift to get my bearings and gain tools, things like yoga teacher training, 12-step program. I've started to pull back from maybe doing what would be the business growth side of things. I'm not doing a whole lot of events right now. I'm not pushing products at markets right now. I'm building communities in more smaller, genuine ways. I'm doing a lot of personal practice, which is why I've opened up a space at Banyan Tree on Sundays to share that practice with anyone who would want to do it with me. I'm not being a hermit. I'm more shifting into alignment. And there are communities of people who are doing this work. And I want you to know that you're not alone in your feelings. If you're in the darkness, if you're on the river of unknown, there are people who are on it too. If you need a 12-step program, if you need a community, if you want to come to yoga, I would love to grow in person with you. These tools, these foundational parts of my roots are giving me the opportunity to tap back into myself, to come back home to my heart. When we lose focus, the way we come back is by stillness. I read Women Who Run with the Wolves many times. It's a pretty thick book, but on audiobooks, there is a shortened version. I think it is because it's only like 2.5 hours long. Clarissa Pinkus Estes, I believe is the author's name, narrates it. It's a beautiful narration. I listened to it twice this past weekend when I was feeling out of myself. And the way that it brought me back home, and one of the profound things she said was that wolves, when they sense an intruder or a danger, they sit in packs and they breathe and they sit in stillness their breath rises up and down and they get quiet. They do this so that they can inherently know when to move. When it comes to our refocus, when it comes to really understanding what's for us, peace, comfort, and quiet is how we know the way forward. Continue to share resources that are helping me find peace, comfort, and quiet. Their daily practices. Every day looks different. Some days look the same, but it's about feeling my way through for the first time in my life. And I'm really proud of that. I want to end with a quote that I read this morning from Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. It may be just a couple of sentences here, but it was years of terrifying change, hard goodbyes, and boundaries, a truckload of boundaries. When we stop numbing and start feeling and learning again, we have to reevaluate everything, especially how to choose loving ourselves over making other people comfortable. It was the hardest work I've ever done and continue to do. I'm here to remind you that in the hard work, it's in the intentional work where we find the greatest peace, where we gain the nutrient-dense soil to help us bloom with new energy and new realization of how purposeful our personal soul's journey can be. I hope this episode makes you feel seen, and thank you so much for listening. I'm Allie, founder of The Cheeky Clean, a wellness brand empowering all human beings to live lighter. You can follow me on Instagram, join the community, DM me at The Cheeky Clean. Go to my website for past interviews, for a wealth of wellness resources, thecheekyclean.com. Go to my Shop My page for specific products and just continue to tap in. I'm here with you, and I love you, Cheekies. Thank you for the space to share. All my love.